Changes, we'll keep you up to date. News Talk KVNU, 102 FM, 610 AM. Also on the new KVNU mobile app.
KVNU News Time is 5:05. I'm Bill Walter with this news update brought to you by Mount Logan Laundry. Utah's governor and lieutenant governor will speak at a rally this evening in support of Ukraine. Fox 13 reports Governor Cox and Lieutenant Governor Deidre Henderson are inviting the public to attend the demonstration, which is scheduled to start this hour on the south steps of the state capitol building. Cox tweeted Sunday, quote, "Please join us tomorrow. Let's flood the Capitol and show the world our support for our brothers and sisters in Ukraine," end of quote. Henderson added, quote, "Let's light the Capitol with blue and yellow to show our support," end of her statement. This comes as a war continues to rage in Ukraine after Russian forces invaded the country last week. State Senate President J. Stewart Adams announced that he will attend the rally as well, saying that tyranny and aggression cannot win. Democracy matters. Countless other political figures from Utah and beyond have spoken out against Russia's attacks on its neighboring country. Senator Mitt Romney issued a statement Sunday saying, quote, "I join the world in awe of true heroes, the courageous President Zelensky, the brave Ukrainian soldiers, the citizen armies, the mothers cradling frightened children, and the journalists risking their lives to bring us truth." Part of Senator Romney's statement from yesterday. KVNU News Time is 5:06. KVNU weather tonight, mostly clear, low near 15, sunny, and around 40 tomorrow. Partly cloudy and upper 40s on Wednesday. It's been to 46. Right now it's 43 at KVNU. KVNU weather brought to you by Lenright Mortgage. They have interest rates that are usually 0.25% lower or more than other lenders. With an ultra low-cost business model, other lenders just can't compete. Buying or refinancing? Call Lenright Mortgage at 801-APPROVE or visit lenrightmortgage.com.
The colder weather is here. Are your quilts and blankets looking dingy? Is your winter coat or jacket dirty enough to stand in the corner just by itself? Well, go to Mount Logan Laundry. It'll take no time at all to freshen up everything. They have the 55 and 80-pound washers, the biggest around, and great big dryers, too, and it costs a whole lot less than dry cleaning. Free Wi-Fi and drop-off service. Mount Logan Laundry really is the cleanest spot in town on the corner of 5th East, 9th North in Logan, or in Brigham at 1st East, 7th South. Mount Logan Laundry.
KVNU News Time is 5:08. An upcoming class will help to instruct or further enhance artistic skills among older adults during March and April. On KVNU's For the People program on Friday, Amy Anderson of the Sunshine Terrace Foundation told us about the class.
The subtitle is, "I'm not an old fogey, I'm an artist." And I think the point of that was just to identify that no matter who you are, what your skill level is, everybody has a creative side to who they are. And the project came about actually because of funding from the Utah Division of Arts and Museums. They identified a grant opportunity where artists could go and do a training as well as organizations and then apply for a grant, a creative aging grant.
The class will be held at Sunshine Terrace on Wednesdays from 1 to 2:30 p.m. during March and April, with a special appeal to caregivers 55 and older. It will be taught by John Westenskow, who taught art to students at Mount Logan Middle School for 36 years.
It's a real myth and a stereotype that I taught kids for years and years. Well, I'm not talented. I don't have any relatives in my family. As near as I can tell, there's no genetics involved in art. And so a lot of these people, I'm assuming, probably have no background, and that's fantastic. Because we can come in and we can just get going, and they can learn about it, and they can go whatever direction they'd like from that point.
The class is also funded in part by the Utah Commission on Aging. The cost is $25 per person. You can get more information on Sunshine Terrace Foundation's Facebook page. Backers say a plan to create education savings accounts will help students in kindergarten through 12th grade, but opponents say it's just another voucher program to funnel public education money to private and religious schools. The Idaho House Education Committee heard arguments on the measure but took no action today after running out of time due to the many people who signed up to testify. The measure allows parents to get $6,000 from the state for private tutoring or tuition at private schools. Opponents say the measure violates the Idaho Constitution that requires a uniform system of free public education. KVNU News Time is 5:10. For more details on these and other stories, visit CacheValleyDaily.com.
Updates every 30 minutes and breaking news as it happens. News Talk KVNU, your #1 radio station for news and talk.
Adams Wealth Advisors' entire team says, thank you, Cache Valley, for voting them the best financial planner in the Best of Northern Utah competition. Honesty and integrity is the hallmark of Adams Wealth Advisors. Let them earn your trust today.
This is Craig Adams. At Adams Wealth Advisors, we are here to help you receive peace of mind, whether you've done a lot of planning or a little planning. Count on our team at Adams Wealth Advisors for honesty, professionalism, and integrity.
Visit AdamsWealthAdvisors.com or call 752-1702 to schedule a time with an advisor today. Please see AdamsWealthAdvisors.com for more information on these recent awards.
For our military families, Americans can show appreciation through education.
Because of you, I will walk across the stage.
I can show my children that they can succeed at any point in their life.
I would be able to make a positive difference in the lives of other people.
I was able to achieve my dreams and work on eradicate some of the world's top diseases.
I was able to get the education that I always wanted.
Because of you, I will be paying it forward and serving my nation.
Join us at ThanksUSA.org.
Hi, I'm EJ Williams. Each year, millions of animals are abandoned, and more than 1 million are euthanized before they can be rescued. Organizations like American Humane are working to harness the healing power of the human-animal bond, as animals can be trained as life-saving service and therapy dogs to help veterans, the elderly, and children with special needs to overcome the obstacles of everyday life. To find out how you can help give animals and the people they help a new leash on life, please visit AmericanHumane.org.
Welcome back to KVNU's For the People. It is a beautiful, still Thursday afternoon. Spring-like weather out there. Just a little taste of what's around the corner weather-wise. We did get some fresh snow over the recent days, but not enough to really impact snowpack too much. It's better, but still way behind where it should be. So I'm still crossing my fingers that March is a wet month. We'll see how that pans out, but definitely not going to complain about the weather today. Beautiful out there. And it was perfect weather for watching the first day of the last week of the legislative session. They wrap up by midnight this Friday night. And if tradition holds, they'll probably wrap up a bit earlier than midnight. When they used to wrap up on Thursdays, they would go right up to the wire. Few times over the last several years have they actually done that. But we'll see. It's a mad dash in the final weeks for legislation. Again, it's not against the rules per se, but it's frowned upon to open new legislation in the final week. We haven't seen that as of yet today, but we did see some interesting legislative action. The Hope Scholarship Bill, the school voucher bill with the rosy name on it, Hope Scholarships, failed the House today. It was moved ahead by a committee despite Governor Cox's veto threat, and then went to a House floor debate, and it was not close. I think we have final word from Utahns once again, 14 years later, that school vouchers still not popular here in Utah, if legislative votes are any indicator at least. Assuming they heard from constituents on this and cast their votes accordingly, the final vote in the House was 53 against and only 22 for. Governor Cox again has said he would veto the bill unless teachers were making $60,000 a year. He said until we get to that point, he thinks it's premature to be taking money out of the education budget and handing that off to private companies, private schools. So that bill is done. Again, 53-22. It was not even close on school vouchers. And this puts to rest, legislative leaders had sent out a survey earlier in the session, and there was a question on the survey. It was really vague. It literally said, do you think K-12 public education has been innovative enough? And then they tried to tout that, at least a handful of Utah lawmakers and the House Speaker himself tried to tout the results of that poll, which was 80% or so saying, no, they didn't think K-12 public education had been innovative enough, as the public being behind vouchers. So then the bill was sponsored by Representative Mike McKell in the Senate and, Senator Mike McKell in the Senate and Representative Candace Pierucci in the House. And the polling of constituents began through lawmaker contact. Today, the bill died. And again, it was not close. So again, assuming that the House had been polling their constituents, I think we can rest assured that for the time being, at least, vouchers, school vouchers, and systems like that, still not very popular here in Utah. That is the end of that bill, by the way. The sponsor said there are certain legislative maneuvers that sponsors can use to bring a bill back, but the sponsor of the bill said they did not choose to do that. So vouchers dead for this year. There was a bit of dust up during the Senate media availability today over as we start to see actual text of the state budget made public. There was a dust-up in the Senate media availability after a question from a journalist, Brian Mullehy of KUTV News. That was a great question, actually, because it gets to one of my least favorite parts of the appropriations process, which is things getting tacked into this big spending bill without any public debate. Now, lawmakers, leadership especially, will assure you this never happens, but we all know that it does. For the first time, in my memory at least, we caught him. Now, this doesn't mean the spending is anything nefarious. What it means is that the public debate they promised to have isn't always as public as it should be. At issue in this discussion today was a $15.1 million appropriation line, meaning that $15.1 million in taxpayer money was going to be spent by the Utah legislature on something really vague. Housing redevelopment is all it said. Well, Mullehy of KUTV News pointed out, as everyone else was noticing, this $15.1 million was never discussed or debated publicly in any of the Appropriations Committee meetings, in any of the House floor debates over base budgets and more. So a simple question then, where did this $15.1 million come from that we're going to be spending of taxpayer money? What is housing redevelopment? I mean, that's all it says on this line item in the budget. And who approved it?
Along those lines, there is an item that's called housing preservation for $15 million. I can't find anywhere where that's been discussed. There's nothing. Who made that appropriation request? Where did that come from, and what's it for?
So, Brian, good question. I actually asked that question. I think it was asked about the committee. My understanding of it, and I didn't see it, the same thing as you. I couldn't find the explanation of it on the list. But my understanding is it came out of a effort that we did last spring in one of the either special sessions or in one of the sessions we've had. We've had so many, I'm not sure which one, but it has to do with the tearing down of old housing and it's restoration. And that's what I found about it, and that's all I know right now. But I'm trying to get more information, and when I get it, I'll be happy to share it with you.
Doesn't it seem like a bit of a problem that things are getting funded, and even you, the Senate president, doesn't know anything about it, and yet all of a sudden it shows up in the priority list?
I thought it was there. Now, Senator Stevenson and Ibsen,
the president's right. It was discussed in a meeting last April, and I would have to go look, but I think it's Article 10. And that's why there wasn't a detailed explanation. We've looked at it. I've actually talked on this, looked on the subject twice this morning, and the president's absolutely right. That's where it was discussed and brought forward. And I'm sure it was last April.
So $15.1 million going to be spent by the legislature. They weren't sure where this came from, even though it was in the budget. and they had to go back and do some research to find out themselves. And it turns out it was a short discussion during an interim meeting regarding the COVID-19 emergency, one of their, or it's not interim meeting, special session. One of the special sessions they called themselves into because we gave them that power a couple of years ago. I don't know why. And during that, they discussed spending $15 million of taxpayer money, tearing down some old housing and building some new housing at taxpayer expense. Last April, that happened. But they weren't sure until they started asking questions themselves, despite the fact that this $15 million was already in the budget. The less organized side of the appropriations process, I guess, is the nicest thing you could say about that. But thankfully, after some dogged journalism, we now know. On a brighter note, well, not so bright note, but a less frustrating note, Senate leadership was asked to weigh in on what we're seeing play out in Ukraine with the Russian invasion of Ukraine, and news today that Russia was using cluster bombs and missiles on civilian sites, even housing complexes. There was talk of a resolution to condemn from the legislature. They're not sure if there's time for that at this point, but legislative leadership did offer some thoughts on what they're thinking, what they're passing on up to the governor, and what the governor is going to be taking to the White House next week.
One is I'm to defend with the limited resources they have, their homeland. I have a sense of what can I say, pride. You can tell that they're fighting and they're defending with a purpose, and you have great admiration and compassion for someone who does that. So I'm a little bit in awe that they've been able to defend themselves so well. And then you get kind of sick and you feel very disturbed at the fact you see these families broken up, moms and children leaving, husbands staying, grandparents. I mean, a grandfather, 80 years old, shows up with some sandwiches in his briefcase and says, "Give me a gun. I'm fighting for my grandkids." How does that not get to you? And you what's happened is wrong, and we want to stand with them. So I'm gonna, before I go have more problems.
That was, again, Senate President Stuart Adams on the war on Ukraine with the Russian invasion escalating, as the news today reporting. We'll be talking about Ukraine again on tomorrow's show, by the way, with Craig Peterson here for the For the People Book Club. He's chosen this month, in light of the news out of Ukraine and the launch of that invasion by Russia, a book called "This Is How They Tell Me the World Ends: The Cyber Weapons Arms Race" by Nicole Perloff, a journalist. The book was published in 2021, and Craig is bringing that to the table tomorrow in the For the People Book Club. So more on Ukraine and the international news you're seeing all around you about that on tomorrow's show. More of recapping the first day of the last week of the legislative session. What did Cache Valley lawmakers get up to today? We'll talk about it right after this.
Every year, dozens of first responders and police are injured or killed while assisting motorists on the side of busy highways, and hundreds of people are killed changing tires or stopping for other reasons. Most drivers are unaware that the law in all 50 states says that when you see flashing lights, you're required to slow down and move to the next lane. Failing to obey these laws can result in fines and criminal charges if someone is injured. So if you see a police car, ambulance, tow truck, fire truck, or any emergency vehicle on the side of the road, slow down to at least 20 miles per hour below the speed limit and move to the next lane. And if you think you need to pull over to the side of the road, do so only if it's an emergency, and never pull over to the median side of the highway. Park as far from the highway as possible, turn on your hazard lights, make sure all passengers get out of the vehicle, and light flares if you have them. And don't risk your life trying to change a flat tire on a dangerous highway. Carefully drive to the nearest exit. To learn more, visit nationalpolice.org.
Why was the basketball court all wet? Because the players kept dribbling on it.
The dad joke. Corny, groan-worthy, but also one of the simplest ways to share a moment with your kids.
What did the buffalo say when he dropped his son off for school? Bye, son.
So take a moment to make your kid laugh, because dad jokes rule. Make your kid laugh today. Go to fatherhood.gov. Brought to you by the U.S. Department of Health and Human Services and the Ad Council.
Tuesday edition, Clay and Buck Show. All the masks are suddenly gone, and we are finally starting to hold politicians accountable just in time for the State of the Union, Buck. We'll be setting the table for everything going on there.
Plus, the latest in Ukraine are the sanctions against the Russians actually beginning to crumble Putin's economy, and could that threaten his rule at home? We'll get into that coming up on the Clay and Buck Show.
10 to 1 on News Talk KVNU, 102 FM and 610 AM.
Welcome back to KVNU's For the People. I have two of the same streaming services. This qualifies as officially like a first world problem. But man, is it frustrating. I'm trying to sort this out all day and just cannot get to the bottom of... anyway, I won't get into it. But I think the reason I bring this up is actually related to the show. I've been wondering for a long time when we hit some kind of critical mass, I think would be a good word on this. And we're seeing some signs. You probably noticed during the Super Bowl a few more that you hadn't heard of yet. You probably have seen yourself a few just, browsing around online that you'd never heard of before maybe. Or you saw a commercial at any time online at cashvalleydaily.com. I've seen some there, but either way, you're tipped off that here's this new subscription thing, another one. I'm pretty sure every major network has one. You've got AMC, Paramount, Discovery Plus, CBS has their own, NBC has their own. I don't know if ABC has. CNN just launched CNN Plus, and every time I see this, I know there's some consultants making a lot of money. You should do this. You got to do this. But the question going through my head more and more often, it has been from the start, but more and more often, is where's the threshold? There's a threshold in which the general populace is going to say, no, too much. And it's not going to be about the price tag necessarily. Because honestly, 6, 7 of your favorite streaming services is still, not a huge amount of money. Most people, I think, can afford that. And especially those who decide to go that route rather than have a pricey, television package plan from a satellite or cable provider. Then at that point, 6 or 7 streaming services is peanuts. So it's not going to be price tag related, but there is going to be a point where it's just, I'm not going to have 75 different services billing me at random times during the month. I said the same thing when newspapers started really pushing the subscription model. And I subscribe. I subscribe to the Salt Lake Tribune and a couple of the national legacy papers because I like the stories, but also I like to feel like I'm contributing to at least slowing their demise, because I don't want to see... we're on the last week of the legislative session here. I do not want to see what a legislative session looks like without a well-funded statewide newspaper newsroom on the job. So it's not price-related. It's volume. And I don't claim to know where the threshold is, where everyone's limits will be, but I know that there is one. Maybe it's 5, maybe it's 4, maybe it's 6, maybe it's 10. But there's a point for each individual, and there will be an average of all individuals that could be summarized somehow, in which it's one too many. I'm just not signing up for another service. I've already got 5 billing me each month. I'm not signing up for a 6th. And And so I think we're going to see a reversal of sorts, and hopefully what we see is maybe some bundling, a little bit more bundling, which at that point it becomes like we're recreating the cable and satellite companies again, just through an internet connection instead of a physical media running to your home or a satellite dish on your roof. And then it builds back up, and then we'll see some other resolution. Likely the direct signal to the back of your brain is probably the next step in all this.
Ooh, that'd be scary.
Yeah. I'm still, I can't say I'm 100% opposed. I don't want CNN or any of the major networks beamed into my head, but being able to access...
People have enough trouble sleeping at night, to
Sure.
have stuff like that.
But being able to access the internet from a chip at the back of on my neck, under the skin, I'd have to think about it. I'm not an absolute no immediately on that one. I'd have to think about it. It would definitely, I'd have to see the security white papers on that first. But anyway, back to what I was saying. There is going to be a threshold, and we are starting to see that a little bit. Part of this is, of course, the pandemic. COVID-19 in the last 2 years have really got dollar signs flashing in marketing executives at every content producer out there when it comes to television, movies, other entertainment, music, and even books. And we've also seen over the last several years the popularity of the subscription model. And there's two reasons for this. Anyone who is even loosely connected to some marketing experience or education can tell you that with a subscription service, you not only get money, but you get loyalty. It's a weird way that our brains work, but you are subscribing, you're paying for something every month, and you are part of an exclusive club at that point. As long as you're happy with the content being provided, you are proud to be a member of that exclusive club. And so that is very beneficial for these companies when it comes to marketing their future products or their affiliates, whatever it might be. So the subscription model is not new, but it's rarely been considered until recently when it comes to television, for example, or movies. Now everyone's having to rethink that. And then the pandemic comes along and just dumps gasoline on that fire. And everyone and their dogs is setting up a new subscription service for you to consider. Again, every major network, I'm pretty sure if you've got one of those 250 channel packages through Comcast, for example, here locally, I would say by the end of the next 5 years, a good 201 of them are going to have their own subscription service you can subscribe to and get bonus content or exclusive shows. We're seeing it with the whole Taylor Sheridan universe, as Andy called it last Friday, the Yellowstone thing with all the spinoffs planned. Well, you've got Yellowstone that's happening on here on this One Avenue channel
Paramount
network, or
I can't remember which.
Well,
one.
you can watch it on TV in a certain way, and then you can stream the old episodes in another way, and then the spinoffs you can watch a different way. Like 1883 was Paramount Plus only.
Yeah, that's right.
And so no one's going to put up with this forever. There is a reason. This is what I'm saying. Despite all of our complaints about the traditional providers of visual entertainment like television and even movies, there is a reason they succeeded in the first place, and that can't be discounted. And one of those, I think, is one bill for everything. People like that. And so I think people are willing to pay for, again, these are arbitrary numbers. I don't know where the threshold will actually be. But people are, let's say 4. People will subscribe to 4. Now, let's say 6, because I've got 5. So let's say 6. People will subscribe to 6 different streaming media services. And then getting them to sign up for the 7th is near to impossible. And I think we're at that point. I think we're seeing some of the explosion of subscriptions from the pandemic, which everyone knew was probably going to level out at a certain point. That's starting to taper off. We're seeing numbers go down.
And I wonder with these streaming services, now some of them are, owned along with the big TV networks, but sure. I just wonder if we'll see kind of a merger of a lot of these streaming services into one service.
Well, and that's my frustration, and that's kind of where I'm going with all of this, Bill. I wish they had just talked beforehand. I wish they had just said, look, we know where this is going. It's so obvious where this is going. Let's just merge before we start the service. Let's just plan. And we saw a little of this, like Disney Plus. When they launched, you can get Disney Plus, National Geographic Plus, I don't know if that's what it's called, and Hulu. It's a little extra than just plain old Disney Plus, but you can get the three bundled together for one fee a month. That's the type of thing that I think will keep people in this world and forking over the money on a regular basis. But there's just not enough of that happening right now.
Well, and you think with the economy, with housing costs being so high, gasoline may go up, food has gone up, so people have to make choices.
Sure.
Many people will.
Yeah. And you can feel it. Everyone's kind of under a bit of a crunch on the other side, too, as far as the content providers and the service providers, because they're feeling it. The cable companies and the satellite companies, they're a little skittish right now because they saw how fast this changed over the last couple of years. And again, they know there was a pandemic boom, and so there will be a post-pandemic bust. But that bust is not going to mean the streaming services go away. And so you've seen what the major cable providers and satellite television providers have tried to do is sort of hijack it. They ask you to put your passwords and email address for those services in through their device, and then it looks like they're supplying the content to you, even though you're paying somebody else and don't need their device in the mix there. Most smart TVs will handle this without it. So that's their bet to buy some time. But it's fascinating to think where all this goes, especially, again, when you consider it might just loop back around. It might just, these streaming services, Netflix was going to disrupt cable and satellite providers and be the revolution to the way we got our entertainment. And to a large extent, that's all proven true. Netflix alone changed how movies are made forever. I believe Netflix one day will permanently change how we experience movies, even in person at theaters. It's changed film festivals like Sundance. So it's been a huge influence. But I still think this all loops back around, and eventually people are saying, you know what I would like? I'd like to pay one monthly bill to some company that just collects all of the streaming service content for me and feeds it to me through some device in my home. Almost exactly like what we had before anyone had even heard of any of these streaming services. So it's going to be interesting to see if that prediction from me proves true. But I do believe within the next 5 years, you're going to see all this loop back around. It might not be your cable provider or your satellite provider that you know now. It might be some other company, some new company. But either way, I still think we're going to loop back around to where you're paying a monthly fee for someone else to go out and negotiate packages with all of these streaming services because, frankly, there's just too many streaming services. This is exactly what happened with channel-based network television. There were just too many. And so no one could make it on their own. No customer wanted to pay each content producer independently. That's insane. And so the package cable and satellite provider model was invented. And I think the same thing is coming next for the streaming services.
Well, and I think people are fed up, too, when it comes to regular television. It seems like every year you see an announcement on a certain channel, one of your favorite channels that you watch on TV. It says, so-and-so is going to be pulling our service.
They're going to bump us, yeah.
And so if you want our channel or our network, be sure to call so-and-so and tell them you still want this. And then they get the other side and the
fight plays out for 3 months.
Yeah, and the viewers are the pawns in their little dispute over a rate hike or something.
Yeah. That's one thing I hope changes because of the popularity of these streaming services. I hope these behemoths that have dominated this world for a few decades now have had a bit of an awakening and realized that, let's be honest, cable providers, satellite TV providers, y'all been phoning it in for a while. And I'm not just talking about your extremely substandard customer service. I'm talking about even the product you offer. So everybody could use a huge dose of stepping it up, I think. And I hope that the streaming services provide that juice. But like I say, it's going to be funny to watch this all loop back around, and we all just want to pay a large fee each month for a package rather than each streaming service independently. 753-5868 if you'd like to weigh in. We'll be back right after this look at the news from KVNU's Bill Walter.
Thank you, Jason. KVNU News Time is 5:40. News brought to you by Northern Steel Building. Hundreds turned out Friday afternoon to jump into the frigid waters of Hiram State Park for the Polar Plunge. The charity event raises money for Utah Special Olympics and returned to northern Utah after a hiatus for several years. Even with the sun shining, the water temperature was only around 38 degrees. While some stripped to the bare essentials, others dressed in costume to splash into the icy cold water. Cache County Sheriff's Deputy Misty Garn organized one of the 24 or more teams that participated. Her fellow deputies all dressed in costume of the TV sitcom Reno 911.
And of course we had to have our Terry that's in all the episodes. So we had Terry and a bunch of cops, and then we did the forced sale of Sergeant Gates.
Teams were made up of local businesses, organizations, or families. All the local high schools were also involved, most of them organizing teams made up of teachers and students that work with kids who have special needs. As teams began showing up to register, crews used a large chainsaw to cut a 30 by 50 foot hole in the ice near the boat ramp. A bulldozer then cleared out the large chunks of ice, some more than a foot thick. Garn was glad to see the popular event return. She said it not only is a great way to raise money for Special Olympics, but it brings attention to those with disabilities.
Special Olympic motto is, let me win, but if I cannot win, let me be brave in the attempt. So that's what we're doing today. We're being brave in our attempt, even if we don't win.
Most jumped in at the far edge of the icy water and quickly made their way towards the boat ramp where a fire and warm drinks were waiting. 2 volunteers from the Cache County Sheriff's Search and Rescue were in the water wearing dry suits to make sure everyone was safe during the 2-hour event. As the U.S. government urges American citizens in Russia to consider immediately leaving the country, the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints confirmed they no longer have any Americans serving there. Church spokesman Sam Penrod, in a statement to KUTV Sunday evening, said the church does not have any foreign full-time missionaries in Russia. He also confirmed that as of mid-February, approximately 50 young volunteers had taken assignments outside of Russia, given the recent recommendation of many foreign governments advising against travel to that area. Missionaries in Russia have been referred to as volunteers since 2016 after a law was passed in that country limiting religious proselytizing. The church's governing First Presidency issued a statement last week about Russia's invasion of Ukraine without directly naming either country. And an injured skier was rescued in Maybird Gulch in Little Cottonwood Canyon on Saturday. KUTV reports search and rescue teams were called at about 4:20 p.m. to assist the skier. Officials said due to the remote location of the skier, rapidly losing daylight, and nature of the injuries, Search and Rescue Command called in for a helicopter extraction. They added that a second ground team was deployed in case the helicopter operation was not successful. An Intermountain Life Flight successfully retrieved the skier before sundown. All teams were reported being off the mountain by 7 p.m. KVNU News Time is 5:44.
A building is just a building until it's your building. It's where you work, where you create, and where you store your valuable equipment. You take pride in your building, so make sure it's built right and built to last. Northern Steel Buildings will guide you from concept to construction. For your commercial, agricultural, or industrial steel building, visit northernsteelbuilding.com to see their quality work, or call 435-677-7300. Northern Steel Buildings. Value from concept to construction.
KVNU weather tonight, mostly clear. Low overnight near 15. Sunny and around 40 tomorrow. Partly cloudy upper 40s on Wednesday. It was 46 today. Right now it's 40 at KVNU. KVNU weather brought to you by Berenson Caldwell. When the bills from your accident pile up, it's time for you to consider professional legal advice. It's time for you to get the bear. Berenson Caldwell. Visit BerensonLaw.com. For more details on these and other stories, visit CashValleyDaily.com.
My name is Dr. Brandon Prevey, and I love being a dentist. I work with Drs. Curtis Taylor, Anthony Larson, and Paul Harris. When people ask where our office is, I actually have two answers. First, I spend part of the week at Logan Dental Associates, and then second, I spend the other part at Cherry Creek Dental in Richmond. Both locations are a full-service dental office and can take care of everyone in the family. Call or go online and make your appointment with the office that's most convenient for you. Logan Dental Associates in Logan or Cherry Creek Dental in Richmond.
Hi, this is Gordon Deal. Tuesday on This Morning, America's First News. President Biden will try to balance competing priorities on issues like inflation and his Supreme Court pick during his State of the Union address. Also, understandably, the White House isn't preparing a victory declaration over COVID during his remarks. And 4 ways to save money on gas by using your smartphone other than checking Gas Buddy. Tuesday on This Morning, America's First News. From 4 to 6 on News Talk KVNU, 610 AM and 102 FM. Your station for news and talk.
Welcome back to KVNU's For the People. Another totally random, unplanned. This is what happened when a guest cancels last minute. You get just everything I've been thinking about today or recently. This is literally something I'm thinking about because of the last 30 seconds of my conversation with Bill during the break. But I don't know what happened to me in the 90s, Bill. I missed everything. I did. I checked out. I was
there was a lot that you know, that nobody misses.
I wasn't a fan of a lot of the night, even though I would be, I am the age group that you think of when you think of, people growing up in the 90s and fans of grunge music and Friends and
Alanis Morissette.
Alanis Morissette annoyed me. There were a couple songs.
I listen to Alanis now and I'm going, because there were a couple songs that I liked at the time, but now I listen to them and I'm going,
this is whiny.
She's really annoying. Yeah.
Yeah,
she's a pain to listen to.
Most of the 90s was whiny. I mean that's honestly what I think of when whenever this goes through my head, it wasn't good. I don't know. I shouldn't say that because I haven't seen it. But I missed Seinfeld. I didn't start watching Seinfeld until 2008 or 9. I started watching reruns.
Don't tell Craig Hislop that.
Oh, and I'm a fan now.
Yeah.
But I could have cared less when it was popular and new episodes being made.
I'm not a Seinfeld expert at all. I watched a few episodes here and there, but
I didn't care for Friends.
Friends are the first couple seasons of Friends was funny and was good, and then it's one of those shows. It's kind of like why didn't they wrap this up after 3 years?
That's.
I think they kept it going just maybe a little bit too long, and it got kind of weird.
Yeah, that's. I just it missed me. Even the first thing I really remember as a cultural phenomena from the 90s that was kind of my coming back out of a cultural slumber of some kind, because I even did this with music. I checked out after Alice in Chains. I was okay. Nirvana was, I thought they were a little overblown, like, too much hype for their talent. I mean, they were talented, but not that talented. And then the whole grunge thing started, and some of it, I liked Alice in Chains. I was a fan of a lot of the early Soundgarden. And then after that,
I always like Collective Soul.
Collective Soul had some snappy hits you could tap your toe to.
Is Collective Soul really considered grunge?
Not grunge, but they're very 90s rock. Collective Soul is the epitome of 90s rock. And for some reason, I got tired of the whole thing. I just checked out. And I don't really have memory of anything between that and Blair Witch Project. Blair Witch Project was the first time I'm like, oh, hey, look, okay, something caught my interest here. I don't know what I was doing. I don't know what I was listening to. There's just this big gap in my cultural memory. And so I missed all these. I have every friend I have talks about episodes of Friends that I have never seen, and they can quote them. I will say this, to prove that I'm not just hating on the 90s in general, there was some great stuff. Romy and Michelle's high school reunion, one of the funniest, and I don't know if you've seen it, Bill, but when she tells everyone at her high school reunion that she invented Post-it notes because she feels like a bit of a failure. Have you seen that? It's hilarious.
I don't recall.
And then she gets caught in the lie, so she says, well, I didn't invent Post-it notes. I invented the glue that goes on the back of the Post-it notes, because no one can fact check that, right? It's a hilarious movie about, and it has one of the stars of Friends. I forget her name. Lisa Kudrow. She's in Romeo and Michelle's high school reunion, and so not everything that came out in the 90s was bad, but yeah, I just have this big gap. Anyway, this conversation started because Bill said that he and his wife have been watching Gilmore Girls, and that was a
and that
popular...
actually, the more I think about it, I thought that was more 2000 to
that was
2000.
Gilmore Girls was when things started to get better. As things started to ramp back up and you started to see more creativity going into things. Gilmore Girls, I think, was a result of that. And then you also had a lot of popular TV shows in that same era, basically, 2004 to 2010-ish. And that's when they started, I think the 90s doldrums finally washed out of the system. Because that was one of my issues with Friends, is I just didn't really find it that creative. It had some chuckles every time I would catch an episode, but I was not compelled to go back to it.
Well, made a star of all of them, especially what's her name, Jennifer Aniston, and the others as well.
Here's my question. Speaking of angering Craig Hislop, were shows like Friends and Seinfeld really successful and now ingrained into our cultural history because they were so good, or because there was so little competition?
Well, I think, like with Seinfeld, it was so different than anything else on network television at the time.
I'm just being mean. Seinfeld was it was unique in that way, and that whole breaking the fourth wall kind of sort of thing was new to television's long running series at least.
A little less popular with another stand up comic was Everybody Loves Raymond. A lot of people were fans of that. It didn't quite have the cult following that Seinfeld had. But I know a lot of people that liked, and family members that liked that show.
Yeah, that's but at the same time, I do have I have to confess this, I have a history in my life of coming to things very late. And I have friends that will tease me. It's like, have you guys heard this? This is one of the coolest albums I've heard. And then they have to explain to me it's like 7 years old. And they're tired of it. I've just discovered it. I'm the same with a lot of network television TV. My one excuse is the ADD. I commercials on television, my brain wanders off, and a lot of times I don't come back. So it was hard for me to get into a television show, a weekly installment type television show, because I'd watch one episode and think, oh, that's great, I'm going to make sure to watch this next week, and then I just wouldn't. Or I'd watch 3 or 4 episodes, and then something would happen I'd miss 2, and then the pre-on-demand days you're out of luck. And so I just kind of gave up on network television through most of the 90s, and then came back to it, realized Seinfeld was really funny. I don't hate Friends. It's just not my thing. There was some other good stuff. Do you remember Mad About You?
Yeah.
That was
clever show.
Oh,
Helen Hunt and the other guy, Paul
Reiser.
Paul Reiser.
Yeah. For some reason, that show.
Well written. It was funny.
Yeah, that was a funny show. When I was a kid, my mom and I used to watch reruns of Designing Women and Golden Girls. You know?
Yeah, I never got into those.
I always liked Delta Burke. And what's her name? Potts.
Annie Potts.
Yeah, from Ghostbusters. That's how most people know her. She was in Designing Women. Nothing beats MASH, though. I came to that one late, too. I think I was alive through a lot of MASH, but I really only remember seeing the series finale live.
Yeah.
I'm sure I saw other ones as they premiered for the first time ever, but the only one I remember.
Hours, I think.
Yeah, I was very young, and I remember no one liked it in the house where we were watching. Everyone was disappointed, but I have a vague memory of that series finale of MASH.
And it survived all about the Korean War, and it lasted
longer than the war?
Yeah, six times longer than the actual war did.
Yeah.
But it just. I guess, they had different characters. They had people leave the show for whatever reason.
It was groundbreaking comedy in a lot of ways.
And they were able to replace them with other compelling characters.
And it's funny, everybody's got their... I'm not a Trapper or BJ hater. I can appreciate both.
I like Trapper a little better. He was cool.
I think they both had pros and cons. I really... And personally, I totally understand why everyone really liked Frank Burns. That is the perfect foil character for a comedic TV show. But don't snooze on Winchester. He was a funny guy.
He had some more depth.
Yeah, a little more nuance and less of a
and I think that's why
two-dimensional villain.
I read somewhere that's why Larry Linville had decided to leave the show. He just said, he said I've done everything with Frank that I can do.
So there was nowhere to go with the character.
Because the guy has no depth. So, he's kind of come to his natural conclusion.
Yeah. That's a little run through TV history there. But, yeah, this started with, somehow I just was in a cultural coma through the 90s. I don't know why. But, Bill, I hope you and your wife are enjoying Gilmore Girls.
She is more than me. I catch it here and there.
That's when things started getting good again, around that same era. A bit before, but 753-5868. We'll be back right after this.
Cache Valley Hearing and Audiology is Cache Valley's most trusted name in hearing aids. Once again, you'll be able to hear a loved one's laughter and understand conversations. Schedule a free hearing evaluation with Dr. Paul Daines at Cache Valley Hearing and Audiology. Call 753-4327. That's 753-HEAR. Or visit cachehearing.com.
Bring back what you've been missing. Bring back Cache Valley Hearing and Audiology.
Hey, it's me, your cell phone. We need to talk about something serious. I know you love me, I know you like using me wherever you are, but I feel like this isn't working out when you're driving. I know you may think that it's possible to focus both on me and the road, but I just don't feel the same way. I think we should spend time away from each other when you're driving. It's for the best.
Visit StopTextStopWrecks.org, a message brought to you by the National Highway Traffic Safety Administration, Project Yellow Light, and the Ad Council.
You're who you always were.
She was screaming and crying. I've never seen her like that in my life.
You're who you've always been.
So we ended up calling the doctor, and he said, this isn't just an ear infection.
You always had it in you.
This is our daughter, and we didn't know how to help her.
To fight monsters and win.
Every day, thousands of kids like Gwen enter a Children's Miracle Network hospital. And for many of them, they're fighting for their lives. Children's hospitals are underfunded, which is why these hospitals rely on community support. 100% of contributions made at helpkidstoday.org go to your local member children's hospital so they can spend it on their most urgent needs.
It's life-changing for a kid like Gwen.
We can't change their diagnosis, but together, we're changing their future. For ways to help, visit us at helpkidstoday.org. helpkidstoday.org.
That is our time for today. And honestly, the jokes I've made about our guest canceling on us today, I totally understand. If our guest happens to be out there listening, completely understand. we just have to make the jokes. We'll try this again, and if you'd like to read the...
we have a lot of guests that cancel from time to time.
If you'd like to read the one interview that our guest did today before deciding she wasn't doing any more today, check it out. I've linked to it on our Facebook page. It's enlightening regarding Russia and Ukraine. Interview with a USU professor. Craig Peterson and the For the People Book Club will be